Oh, hey folks, Adam here. How's it going? Welcome to my zone. Come on in and I'll talk to you about what I'm working on. First, we'll talk about George Hegel, a political theorist and German philosopher from the 19th century. From there, we'll move into talking about what users of digital technology are doing. And then we'll talk about what's going on with legislation in regards to digital media. Then we'll tie it all together and see what Hegel, digital media, and copyright legislation has in common. So we'll start with Hegel and his conception of the spirit.
The spirit is the collective consciousness of a given society, which emerges because the self-conscience of each individual comes together and creates a collective reality, or what we call the spirit of the time. Reason, or rationality, is what Hegel thinks helps people to know right from wrong. The ability to reason is developed and fine-tuned through an ongoing association with others. It's by living in society that the individual learns how to make rational choices. Freedom, according to Hegel, is when an individual is free to pursue their personal goals. These goals may often be motivated by self-interest, but they are tempered by the use of reason. The notion of being free to do something is what is referred to as a positive freedom, whereas a negative freedom is when someone is free from something being done to them.
Freedom for Hegel is the essence of the spirit, and he feels that it is positive freedoms and not negative freedoms which are most conducive for the self-development of the individual as well as the overall development of society.
The state, or the government, is responsible for setting the boundaries in which the individual can enjoy their freedom. According to Hegel, the state should draw from the spirit in order to know which laws and regulations will best allow for the desires of the spirit to be realized.
From a Hegelian worldview, laws and regulations should ensure that all members of a society are free to pursue their self-interest without compromising the well-being of the collective. Progress can also be understood as the end result of individuals who use their capacity to reason in order to enjoy their positive conception of freedom. They do this within the boundaries set forth by the state that is based on the collective desires of society.
Jose van Dyck, Dean of Humanities and Professor of Media and Cultural Studies at the University of Amsterdam, highlights one of the more significant things that users of new media and digital technology are doing. User-generated content has unleashed new forms of cultural production. Participatory cultural production is what Van Dyck feels is the result of people using digital technology in order to demand a right to participate in the creation of culture. At a TED conference in 2007, user-generated content was the focus of Harvard Law School professor Larry Lessig's speech.
About user-generated content spreading in businesses in extraordinarily valuable ways like these, celebrating amateur culture. By which I don't mean amateurish culture, I mean culture where people produce for the love of what they're doing and not for the money.
It's love for self-expression that is one of the reasons why some users are participating in the creation and recreation of culture. Thanks to digital technology, amateur creators now have tools that were one time out of their reach under the old media system.
Again, Larry Lessig explains.
Content using digital technologies to say things differently. Now, the importance of this is not the technique that you've seen here. Because, of course, every technique that you've seen here is something that television and film producers have been able to do for the last 50 years. The importance is that that technique has been democratized. It is now anybody with access to a $1,500 computer who can take sounds and images from the culture around us and use it to say things differently. These tools of creativity have become tools of speech. It is a literacy for this generation.
Lessig's claim that new media and digital technology has provided for new tools of speech and a new form of literacy is rather bold. However, If we consider renowned sociologist Manuel Castell's arguments, then we could see that maybe Lessig is onto something.
Castell explains that because of digital technology, new media, and the internet, users have created a new communication model. In a previous documentary, Billy and Illy provided a clear understanding of Castell's model.
Byproducts. We are witnessing the rise in the mass self-communication model. This new form of socialized communication is self-generated in content, self-directed in emission, and self-selected in reception. Created by the many, for the many, it has become a true form of counterpower against corporate mass media and their institutionalized and articulated system of information and meaning making, which is created by the few, for the many.
So what we see is that the spirit of our time is actively engaged in cultural production because it seems to fill an inner desire to finally contribute to the world around us. New levels of self-development made possible by digital technology has created a plurality of voices and is moving society into new forms of collective development. Our capacity to reason in the way we use our new freedoms of expression is having a profound effect on the way we communicate. It could be argued that because of digital technology, we are seeing new forms of self-development as well as new types of progress for society. Now that we have an idea of what kind of effects new media and digital technology is having on society, let's switch our attention and have a look at the policy that governs their use. Our use of new media and digital technology is legislated under the Copyright Act of Canada. Bill C-32, the Copyright Modernization Act, is the government's approach to finding a balance between the users and the owners of digital content. Under the supervision of Industry Minister Tony Clément and Heritage Minister James Moore, the Conservative Government of Canada unveiled their proposed amendments to the Copyright Act of Canada on June 2nd of 2010. Later that month, at a conference held by the Canadian Intellectual Property Council, Minister Moore spoke about the details of Bill C-32 and what he feels the government achieved.
As many of you are aware, on the 2nd of June, we introduced the Copyright Modernization Act. The proposed legislation represents a balanced approach, one that our government believes protects the works of creators while recognizing the interests of consumers and Canadians. The legislation reflects a variety of views expressed during consultations on copyright reform that we held this past summer. The consultation featured an interactive website, open public town hall meetings, multiple stakeholder meetings and roundtables across Canada, and written submissions from everyday Canadians. Canadians talked, and our government listened.
Among many things, the bill provides expanded rights for users of digital technology. The contents being produced by users and amateur creators seems to have been legitimized by the expansion of the fair use provision.
Fair use is a legal provision that allows for the limited use of copyright material without permission for such things as commentary or criticism, research, and news reporting. Carrie Craig, associate professor at the Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto, feels that because the way in which digital media is being used, it represents a powerful and socially valuable form of creative expression. She also applauds the government's efforts in order to extend the fair use provision to include both satire and parodies.
Previously, fair use was only extended to either criticism, personal research, or news reporting. The bill also allows fair use to be used for educational purposes.
According to University of Ottawa law professor Michael Geis, the inclusion of education in the fair use provision represents one of the most important features of the bill.
With the expansion of fair use under Bill C-32, the government seems to acknowledge the importance that user-generated content and amateur cultural production can have for society. It allows for users to be free to express themselves in a way that was once considered copyright infringement. However, there is one element of Bill C-32 that does not work in the favor of users or amateur creators.
It's the digital lock provision of Bill C-32 which seems to be most problematic. Ian Kerr, who holds a Canada Research Chair in Ethics, Law and Technology at the University of Ottawa, explains that digital locks are digital cryptographic measures which prevent digital media from being used in any way other than what the copyright holder wants. Digital locks can be applied to all digital media and can prevent such things as copying, altering the device, and even preventing access. Geist explains that because of the digital lock provision, both the new as well as the existing exceptions for fair use could be nullified.
Digital locks make it so that the copyright and patent holders have the final say in how their device or content should and will be used. This could be problematic if the key holders do not appreciate the value of user-generated content and decide to not recognize that amateur production seems to have been legitimized under Bill C-32. Craig argues that because of digital locks, the changes to the fair use provision are somewhat worthless. Because of digital locks, users may be prevented from using digital technology in a way that they can actually enjoy their new expanded rights. And what this does is actually tips the balance of the bill away from the public interest. Because the bill doesn't put any limits on the use of digital locks, Kerr feels that those who can use them can do so with total impunity. He feels that because of this, a balanced Copyright Act just doesn't stand a chance. Craig adds that since much of the usage of new media relies on the user's ability to circumvent or to unlock media content, the digital lock provision and its unlimited application basically renders the user's right to fairly use media content worthless.
Geist explains that Bill C-32 offers 3 layers of protection, but it is the third one that revolves around digital locks which seems to be most problematic.
This new legislation introduced yesterday provides legal protection for the technology itself, provides essentially a third layer. And so what it says is that any attempt to pick that digital lock, to circumvent that protection, is itself an infringement. And it says that in a way that it doesn't even matter why you were circumventing. It doesn't even matter why you were trying to get around that digital lock. The mere act of trying to pick the lock is itself an act of infringement.
As Kerr points out, the anti-circumvention clause, or the one that prevents the digital lock from being picked, is completely out of place because it extends copyright law to something that has nothing to do with making a copy. Digital locks try to assure the owner of the key that their digital media will be used in both the way they want and think that it should be. Leadberger explains that the notion of controlling how something is used is generally taken care of with patents.
All of our patents, our entire approach to patents and invention is based on the idea that the inventor knows what the invention is for. We can say what it's for.
So if we accept that patents have generally served to decide how and what a device will be used for, then perhaps the idea of picking the digital lock should be handled under patent law and not copyright law. This helps to solidify Kerr's claim that the anti-circumvention clause within Bill C-32 is completely out of place. Now, so much more could be said about the Copyright Modernization Act. Bill C-32 contains many other provisions and clauses that do try to balance the desires of the creators, the owners, and the users of digital technology. However, when all is said and done, Bill C-32 seems to fall rather short of the balance that Minister Moore claimed the government had achieved. Because of digital locks and the anti-circumvention clause, users and amateur creators may see their freedoms severely limited. So in the beginning of this video, I explained how Hegel felt that the spirit of the time was the collective consciousness of society, which emerges because individuals learn to use their capacity to reason in order to enjoy their positive conception of freedom. Ultimately, the spirit of the time is best served when the individual is free to pursue their goals, providing it coincides with the desires of the collective. As explained earlier, Hegel felt that the spirit represents the ideal indicator for understanding what kind of rules and regulations should be implemented for the benefit of society. The goal is to find a balance between the individual's positive conception of freedom and what will be most conducive for development of society. In relation to the usage of new media and digital technology, it seems that the government has put forth legislation that treats the spirit of the users and amateur creators as secondary. Overall, Bill C-32 seems to favor the copyright holders. It allows for their negative conception of freedom, or to be free from infringement, to trump the user's positive conception of freedom, to be free to use digital technology through the fair use provision to express themselves. There is another concern that should be raised in relation to Bill C-32. Based on the material that we've covered, it's clear that digital technology is being used in creative and innovative ways. And if we consider Charles Lieberter's argument that
what we're seeing is a complete corruption of the idea of patents and copyright, meant to be a way to incentivize innovation, meant to be a way to orchestrate the dissemination of knowledge, they are increasingly being used by large companies to create thickets of patents to prevent innovation taking place.
then perhaps Bill C-32 does not have the desires of users and amateur creators in mind. The bill seems to favor corporate demands, and as Kerr explains, the decision to allow for the anti-circumvention clause along with the digital lock provision was a result of heavy lobbying on behalf of corporate entities. The question remains, which spirit is the government most in tune with? Is it the spirit of the users and the creators of digital content, or is it the spirit of capital and copyright owners? In light of what we've seen about Bill C-32, I'm more inclined to think that they are in tune with the spirit of capital and not the spirit of the users. In my opinion, the spirit of our time has tasted the type of freedoms that digital technology can provide, and I really don't think that it's going to be willing to let go of them very easily. Well, there you have it, folks. So thanks for stopping in and having a look at what I'm working on, and I hope you see the importance that digital media and copyright legislation has.